okay, if we could take all the little best parts of a rally, these little moments that we see,
Right.
and create a skateboard film with a car, that would be the way to do it, right?
Yeah.
And so, we were talking to Ken about our idea, and Ken had been doing this Gymkhana stuff, which frankly I thought was really dumb. So again, we started theorizing about how we could take a Subaru and make it look, make it act and look like a muscle car, high horsepower, 4-wheel drive burnouts, like all this stuff. We didn't even know if it was possible.
Cinco de Mayo, everyone. I am Design Muse, and this is...
I am Fastlane Jane, and this is...
Matt Martelli.
And we are on High Octane Hustle.
That's funny. And you're probably wondering...
Cinco de Mayo.
Celebration.
We have our wonderful guest, Matt, brought us some amazing... drinks to share today.
Libations.
Yes.
Yeah, some mezcal.
Mezcal, yes.
Is it all mezcal?
It's all mezcal.
Okay.
Even tequila's mezcal.
Okay. You're going to have to explain that to this dummy over here.
No, it's most people don't know that tequila is just one type of mezcal. And there's about 2,000 other types of mezcal. So I recommend trying them all, figuring out what you like.
2,000.
Yeah, just
What
2,000.
number are you on?
Or a 5?
I think I'm on like 600, so I'm
Wow.
doing pretty good.
That sounds like a great journey.
Is there a front runner for you?
No, what's rad about it is being an off-roader, I've traveled all over the world and all over Mexico, and not on the roads, not on the paved roads. And so I've gone to parts of the country where they make different parts or different types of mezcal. And so when you get to try them in the area, it's just, I guess it's kind of like drinking wine when you go to the valley that the grape is grown in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your brain kind of connects the dots, right? And you're like, oh, okay, this is why it tastes this way, right?
Really? That's so cool.
It's the same thing. And in off-roading, we're eating a lot of dirt, aka terroir. So it's part of the DNA of what we do.
I love that.
That's so cool.
Yeah, no, and like you said, it's part of the area. It's like the culture. Each one has a unique flavor. It's not just the dirt in the valley it's grown in. It's the people that are making it too, and how they create it. Right. All of that is so different in each area.
Yeah, it's the entire process, and that's what's cool about mezcal is that it doesn't adhere to a very strict process. Okay. So that there's a lot of variant in it, in how you mix the different types of agave, how you make the mezcal. It's pretty much all made in a similar fashion, but there's slight tweaks that everybody does to get a different flavor profile.
Yeah.
And or mixing different types of agave. So it's like wine, it's like, cool, you got introduced to some cheap wine as your first wine, and now there's this
right.
whole world
Lunan.
of I don't even know what that is, but
Boone
okay.
Farm.
There you go.
Boone's Farm.
Boone's
There you
Farm,
go. Yeah, that
Pink,
right.
all of those.
And then you start going in and realizing like there's thousands, right?
Yeah.
And especially wine's much the same way. As you travel to different countries, and try their wine, their versions even of the same grape taste differently.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. And mezcal has a really cool story because the Spaniards invade Mexico, right? And with that, they brought the distillation process.
Oh, okay.
So prior to that, the natives of Mexico drank a drink called pulque, which was just mashed down agave that was fermented, right? And if you know anything about it, drinking anything fermented it kind of makes you sick after a while, right?
Kombucha.
Yeah, well, that's
Sorry.
the hard kombucha, right? So because of the Spanish invasion, they brought the distillation process to Mexico and ended up with mezcal and ended up with tequila. So no Spanish invasion of Mexico, no tequila.
Wow. And you heard it here. That was the lesson right there. I actually didn't know any of that.
That's some serious history.
And what even got you on that road? I mean, obviously you kind of started off with the off-roading part of it, and you're on the back roads, and then someone offers you just something that they made, or
Well, I think if you start first with tequila, and it's usually a bad experience, right? It's usually, Tijuana.
it's pretty typical.
The I don't know if you know what a popper is, but it's where they pour it in your throat, shake your head, and blow a whistle, right?
Yes.
And it's terrible tequila.
Yes.
So that's not the best way to get introduced to
Sure.
it. And then you start having better tequila, and my Mexican friends were like, "Oh, if you think that's good, you should try mezcal."
Yeah.
And regionally, there's all these different types of mezcal, and they're all different. So they all have a lot of pride in the mezcal from the region of Mexico that they're from. Mm-hmm. So me being me, I'm like, let's try them all.
Love
right?
it. No, that's great. And no, it is. It's a great way to just like enjoy, just sit back and sip away. And
Well, especially because we have the fake Mexican holiday today, Cinco de Mayo, which is, by the way, not Independence Day for Mexico.
it's our
So we're gonna unwhite it a little bit, and we're gonna have some mezcal.
I love
perfect.
That.
I
We're gonna
love that.
unwhite it.
Unwhite it.
Okay. Delicate pour.
Delicate for us, see?
And
That's-
I'd like, so why don't we share a little bit? Look at this. I mean, first off, look at all of this. It looks amazing. Like, it's beautiful to look at. We have oranges, and these are from Matt's yard, right? You grew
they're
these.
from my orchard. But more, there's a good story behind it that ties into the mezcal. So you know how there's the worms that are in the bottom of some tequila and
Yes.
mezcal. Well, that's the gusano, the worm that's actually a moth larva that destroys the agave. So there's a lot of different stories as to why they put it in the bottle. Some is, if it's completely pickled, it tells you that the alcohol content is correct. There's also, spiritual meaning behind it. It's supposed to give you superpowers. But the version of the
Have
story.
you got your superpowers yet?
No, I keep
You're only
swallowing them.
I was gonna say, you're only 600 in.
Yeah,
You've got,
I keep
what,
swallowing them.
1,400 more to
Hasn't
go.
worked. I don't think
Okay.
it works on white people. I don't know. But
It's part of it. Got it.
the story that I was told is that the Mexican farmers, you spend all this time raising an agave and a worm gets to it, so they're pretty pissed off.
Yeah.
So as a way of revenge, they put the worm in the bottle, and then you're gonna have some salt called gusano rojo. It's made from ground up worms, right? And that's part of the process of tasting this. Is the palate cleanser after you have the mezcal is the orange with some gusano rojo on it.
So when did our
Okay.
podcast turn into Fear Factor for me?
We can talk about cars too, but we'll start with this.
I won't die from any of this, right?
No, it'll
Okay,
clean
cool.
you out.
Clean me out.
was
Right?
Right here.
Hey, I didn't even know what I was getting into. This is amazing.
So this first one that we're drinking is a Joven, and it's made from an espadine plant, right? Like that's the style of the plant that it's made from. And so this hasn't rested at all, meaning that, like wine or tequila rests in an oak barrel. So this one, they made it, and this is gonna be real spicy.
Okay.
And it's gonna be smoky. It's gonna have some bite to it. So
Okay.
start with this
Smell
one.
that.
Okay, are we supposed to cheers?
Cheers.
Cheers or
No,
something?
Whatever.
He's like,
There
I'm
we
just-
go. Wow.
Oh, that's good.
I have never, yeah.
Right? Isn't that
Oh,
good?
that's really
It
delicious.
is. I've never had it before.
Ooh, the smoke
Yep.
Yeah.
on the back is
But it's
so good.
And there's like a very light sweetness.
Yes.
Like it's not
Right
a
at fir-
lot.
No, it's so
But
good.
it's yeah.
I might finish this.
Well, this is one of the cool things is like
That's delicious.
each one has a
was.
different flavor profile. And that one's a little bit hot and spicy, right?
yeah.
And then it mellows out. You can taste the smoke and
Yeah.
kind of smooths out. There's a little bit of minerality in there too.
It is, yeah.
There's a little bit of dirt taste.
Yeah.
So
And I love our little very authentic clay shot set here?
Yeah,
Is there a story behind that as well?
Yeah, I mean, these are just the traditional clay cups that you drink mezcal out of. They're neutral, so it doesn't change the taste of the mezcal.
I love that.
That's nice. And you can just have a little sip instead of, a giant shot glass.
No, it was good.
They make really good margaritas too.
I bet.
That is
but
delicious.
It has such a great flavor.
Yeah, that is
now
it
have
really
a little bit of
does.
the orange with some of the Gusano Rojo on it.
Okay, so just that.
Yep.
Just grab one. Just sprinkle it on or
Yeah,
something.
just dip it in it, sprinkle it on.
Okay. You want?
Sure.
You're in now.
I've gone down the rabbit hole.
This is another
Well, if I start getting
Yeah.
stupid, you guys, it's not my fault.
This is the best way to learn
gosh, that's
Spanish too.
amazing.
By the way.
Yeah, the worm's really good. It was all over my face.
How do you just, secretly spit the seeds out?
That is amazing. Wow.
Right, so it kind of counteracts it. Now you have this nice sweet orange flavor, and all the burning's gone. Right?
Yeah. Oh, that is, okay. I guess I like worms.
Surprise.
I have lipstick all over my face.
I'd help you, but I have no napkins.
This is new to us.
Yeah.
We're doing
Good,
full-on
right?
drinks. That was amazing.
Yeah.
So with the worms ground up, so it's salt and worms in there ground up.
I don't think they even add any salt. I think they dry the worms out, grind them down.
And it's the flavor profile of them.
yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It was, right?
It explains why lizards eat those things, right? Jeez Louise.
Well, it's one of these rad things you find out about, really the people of
I
Mexico.
know you all want to try this.
and their food is like, they make use of everything. Mm-hmm. Some of the best stuff I've had in Mexico, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. And then you have it.
So
you're
you've
like,
sat in this seat before where you're like,
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
All right.
I'm really not sure I want to go
that's
there.
life. You got to keep trying stuff, right?
Totally agree. So I love that you kind of know the stories of each thing. Has that been something like all your life? Like you really want to understand things, or you dive deep into that, or
Sure. I mean, I'm endlessly curious, right?
Yeah.
And I think that being an off-roader, it starts opening that idea up where the more you explore, the more you realize you don't know anything. And the more curious you are, right? And it's, the experience of off-roading isn't just about, the vehicle and you and your friends or whoever. It's about the entire experience, like the food you eat, what you drink, all of that. And it really, it's a mindset, because everybody else in the world is driving down the highway, having the same experience, eating at the same place, doing the same thing, like robots, right? And once you reside yourself to the idea that you are an off-roader, then it opens up this whole other world where you're like, you want to share it, but then the other part of you is you're like, yeah, I don't really.
want the rest of you over
Yeah.
here. We don't want it to turn into that.
Well, it's that saying, and that's part of our culture is, bad roads bring good people, right? And it's very true.
GTS Customs Corvette Specialists. Passion is the driving force behind every design, every build. Innovation taking the client's dream car places never thought possible. Not just seductive form, but flawless function, showcasing today's technology in yesterday's classic curves in luxury and in performance. Head over to highoctanehustle.com, shop the brands page, and check out GTS Customs Corvette Specialists.
Baja Forged. It isn't just the products, and it's not just a brand. It's a way of life. At an early age, traveling to Baja was one of my fondest memories. It was about venturing to unknown destinations. It was the freedom of exploration and really slowing down to enjoy the amazing world and the people we have in it. Baja Forged is about helping you embrace adventure. Baja Forged. Signature vehicle builds and off-road products built to forge your own path. Visit bajaforged.com today.
I have a question for you. Well, it's multifold, but for anybody who doesn't know you, explain the transition from the skating and the surfing to the off-road, and give me a timeline on that.
Sure.
Tell me
I'll try and
about
condense
Matt
it because it's a long timeline. But no, I was born in Michigan in Kalamazoo, and we grew up on a street that it was a union town. So everybody we knew worked for General Motors. My grandmother poured pistons for General Motors for 40 years.
Oh, wow, cool.
Right on.
She lived across the street
cool.
from the factory that she worked in. So when my brother and I were kids, we would go to the union hall, and for what most people don't know what a union hall is, but it's basically where when people aren't working, they're getting drunk.
Nice.
And it's a glorified bar, right?
Yeah.
And we would go in there, and the union members, the workers, would pay us to walk around and make them maps of where the foreign cars were. So we would do that, and then in the afternoon, they were tuned up enough, they would mob up and they would roll around and flip those cars over. And because they were so anti-import, right? Because it was taking jobs away from Americans.
Yeah.
So that's the environment I grew up in.
Okay.
Well, simultaneously, there was, some pretty magical television happening in that era. In particular, ABC's Wide World of Sports.
Oh, yeah.
And me and my brother were sitting there, and we were watching Ivan Stewart barrel through the desert,
That's
the
rad.
Mexican desert, and
Yeah.
a Toyota, and we're like, wow, that is so cool.
Yep.
And in our heads, all these guys must hang out with Steve McQueen in a bar
Right.
on the beach.
On any Sunday right
Yeah,
there.
like in California, right? And that's just the way it
So
is.
you just
It's
needed
so
to get
funny.
to California.
And that's exactly how Dana is too.
Yeah.
That was the mentality
Yeah.
of most people back east and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, we were
Yeah.
like, okay, it's just like everybody's in a movie, and they walk out of the movie and go racing, and their hair always looks beautiful, and
I mean, Steve
they're-
McQueen.
yeah.
I mean,
All of
I
them.
get
James
it.
Garner,
Yeah,
all of them.
yeah.
So, as it happens, my parents moved us out to San Diego when I was 12. My brother was 10, and we went from an all black neighborhood from the east side of Kalamazoo to El Cajon. So it was a bit of a culture shock, but it was also very cool because it was the 80s.
Yeah.
And everything was still free, and it was literally like, hey kid, here's a 3-wheeler.
Right.
And we're going to Mickey Thompson this weekend, and next
So
weekend we're
good.
going to the Baja 1000,
Yep.
and then we're going to Glamis. And so I grew up in this, I call it the Bermuda Triangle, right? It's like
love it.
between,
That was good.
That was so good.
San Diego, Baja, Phoenix, and it was just magical. It was like, we rode motorcycles, we rode quads, we rode 3-wheelers, we drove dune buggies, we skated, we surfed, and people kept trying to get us into team sports, and we're like,
Why?
wait, all the girls are at the beach. Why are we playing football? You know what I mean?
Again, it always goes back to the girls, huh?
Yeah.
Right? Exactly.
I mean, that was kind of a navigational
We get it.
thing,
Right?
as a young male.
Well, it's funny because it leads to the cars. Well, I had to get this car because that's how I got the
100%.
chicks. you
Yeah.
know?
100%. And, cars was such an important thing. It started in Michigan because in Michigan, your car was more important than your house. Houses really nobody cared. Like everybody had
Interesting.
That's
a
like
house.
Germany, I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah,
Heard
no-
it's like Germany.
Like in Michigan, people were like, "Did you see his house?" They don't care about your house. They care about your car.
Huh.
And even people who didn't have 2 nickels to rub together had these fabulous cars. I remember, the pimps that I grew up around had these fabulous cars,
Yeah.
right? And if you didn't have like a cool car, it meant something was kind of, there's something wrong with them.
Interesting. Yeah.
And that was, I think, because that was the car culture of Michigan, of the United States, it was a very high priority and part of your identity.
Yeah.
And so then you come to San Diego, and obviously the housing prices are expensive, but
Right.
it's the same thing in off-road culture. I have people that I'm good friends with that don't own homes, but they have race cars.
That cost as much as a home.
Yeah, I know people that have.
I don't think people realize how much race cars cost
Yeah,
sometimes.
I have a good friend who's got a couple $1 million in race cars, and
Totally.
he lives in a trailer in El Cajon.
Yeah.
And he's totally good with that.
Yeah.
We just got thrown into it and grew up in this culture, and simultaneously grew up skating and surfing. And so when I was younger, I started designing graphics for skateboard companies and making skate films.
Were you just like into art in general, or how did that kind of come about?
I was, I was always creative. I was raised in a creative family and went to like experimental schools,
Okay.
Which is why I still can't do math. But
Obviously not holding you back from
yeah,
anything.
there's a thing called a calculator. It's pretty cool.
Right.
But, really the thing that turned me on was I was about 15 and I was going to Helix High School in La Mesa, and I had a band and I wanted to make shirts for my band. And I heard that there was this graphic design ROP class. And so I walked in there and I'm like, hey, I'm here to make shirts for my band. And, they're like, okay, sit down, kid. We're going to enroll you.
Yeah.
And there were two teachers. One was an older guy named Rick Benson, and then a younger guy who's in his 20s named Rick Dirk. And ROP is largely gone now,
Yep.
but what it was for people, excuse me, who didn't know is job training. Like the idea was you're going to steer some kids that maybe don't want to go to college or can't afford it or just aren't wired that way.
Yeah,
and
technical education.
Yeah,
more.
So we had an amazing auto shop.
Yep,
we had metal shop. We had wood shop. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And it's all gone now, which really sucks for kids.
Yeah, we've worked on bringing some of that back, but I know it's far and few between.
So I walked into this classroom and these teachers were really cool. And the younger teacher, Rick, he didn't talk to us like kids. He talked to us like we were the same. And so that really helped because at that point I was, failing school. I wasn't going to graduate. I didn't even know that yet. You know what I mean? But now I look back at it and I was like, I was just not interested, so I wasn't coming to class. I wasn't, focusing on, anything. I was focused on my band, and this really opened a world for me where I realized like, I can actually have a job doing this.
Right.
And so that
you were good at it. And
I became good at it.
Yeah.
But that really supercharged me. And then some of the people that were around us that Rick brought in, one guy in particular, this crazy, amazing photographer, still probably the best skateboard photographer to this day, Dan Harold Stewart. And so I got to hang out with him and Rick and some other people, and they're like, hey, do you want to intern where you have this fashion magazine? I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And go to the first photo shoot and there's girls there, right? Like,
this is the perfect job.
I'm in, right? And then things just kept, I wasn't afraid of trying things, and especially, we had come from a really rough neighborhood, so like I wasn't intimidated by anything out here. Like people were like, that's actually how I got my first sponsorship skateboarding, is because I punched Tony Alva and he was screaming at me and telling me to drop in at Del Mar at the Keyhole. And, he's older than me and he's just, I'm like, okay, dude, I've had enough. And, I popped him in the mouth and I was 13 or something.
Yeah.
And everybody's like clapping because he was such an asshole, right?
That's awesome.
And
I love it.
This guy, Tony Mag, comes over to me and goes, hey, kid, you're pretty cool. We'll show you some things.
Yeah.
And then he gave me a skateboard deck. And that's when Tony was running H Street. So anyways,
cool.
long story short, sometimes punching people is a good thing. But
you hear that?
yeah. But
We condone it.
If you're a professional.
But no, I just, I was enthralled by it.
Yeah.
Like, and again, part of it is the time and the place. And then, and then I'm carrying cameras for guys at Transworld, and just trying to do anything I could, and designing and getting better and doing t-shirt graphics and skateboard graphics. And, just really interning any place I could.
Yeah.
I probably interned like 30 different places, right?
Wow.
Because I wanted to learn if anything had to do with advertising or graphic design, I would just go and intern for free.
Love it. Yeah.
And it was great. And then, eventually I got picked up by an agency, and, the timing was also really good because the analog ways that we had been taught were going out, and computers were coming in, and I was on the forefront of, graphic design on computers.
That's awesome.
And so these agencies were like, oh, we can hire this 20-year-old kid and fire 5 people.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's what it was,
Yes.
being honest.
Yes.
Like, so that was part of, it was hard work, but it was also timing. And so then I'm working at agencies, and I'm making really, really good money for my age. But I was getting up every day, and I didn't want to go to work, because the subject matter wasn't what I was interested in. And I didn't like the traditional agency process and how they treated people. And, the first time I had to fire like 50 people in a day, I just went back and I went, I get it. I understand this is a mechanism and a way of doing it, but I think I can figure out a better way. Yeah. And both experiences had their pluses and minuses. Working at skateboard brands, they were really good at being on the pulse of trends, right?
Yes, definitely.
But they were totally disorganized. It was like, hey, we got...
They were a bunch of skaters.
Yeah, it was like, we got to add, dude. Who's got the photo? Like, what are we doing, right? And everything was late, and it was, you were compromising because of lack of discipline.
Yeah.
And then on the agency side, it was the opposite. It was like the campaign was done 2 years ago. So it wasn't current.
Yeah.
And they were so rigid that they were like, nope, it's done.
We know that's how corporate is mostly.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, that's,
we
know that in the
Yep,
automotive world.
Totally.
I deal with it all the time.
Totally.
I remember sitting with Jamal Hamidi's when he launched the Raptor, and he's like, you really think people are going to buy them? And he's like, well, I think we're going to make like 2,000 of these. I'm like, Jamal, I will sell 2,000 of these to my friends. Right. You better make 200,000 of these, right? But it's a very important lesson that I learned throughout my career, which is I'm not good at everything, but my culture, I know. Like the authenticity part of it is critical, right? Yeah. And so, I started an agency out of my bedroom called Mad Media. Yeah. And the idea was we could mix the best of, action sports companies and, the discipline of agencies, and that worked. Our first client was a shoe company that we helped launch called Osiris Shoes, and we helped them grow into tens of millions of dollars in sales. We launched multiple shoes tours, the now infamous G bag with them, and it was really cool. But we rose to kind of the top of that food chain in action sports, and it was changing. There were a lot of outside companies coming in and investing and putting unrealistic expectations on the companies, and they effectively ruined that culture. It's still, I feel like, is still suffering today because of that kind of corporate raid. And then, really, I think a big part of it though too is that, Transworld Media was bought and sold multiple times and now doesn't exist. So you don't have a centralized voice. When Dave Swift was writing and Grant Britton was taking photos, it was a path. You had leadership, right? It was kind of like, hey, everybody look this way and go this way. Now you don't have that. With social media is good and bad. It's good because it somewhat democratizes all the opportunity, but it's bad because it's totally fragmented. So you don't know who's the leader, right?
Yeah.
What's the voice we're supposed to follow, right? Yeah. It turns into the biggest asshole in the room, right?
We did talk about who's the loudest, so it could usually be that, yes.
Yeah.
And you kind of hit on culture a little bit. You already noticed that early on, that was a big part of what needed to happen in that.
Well, I mean, skateboarding is really the ultimate bullshit check culture. You know what I mean? And it still is. Totally. Yeah. I mean, because generally you have to come up with an idea and create a product, and you have about 3 months before it's just old, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a pressure cooker for marketing, for sales, for distribution, for everything, right? And it's hard. It's really hard to survive.
Yeah.
When you have that quick turn as a brand. But if you learn that, then it's magic. Now I look at stuff and like I can look at things, especially related to off-road. I already know what the answer is. It's just a process of doing the steps, right?
Yeah.
And it's because we're part of the culture, right? We're not some outside person coming in going, well, we looked at the data and the It's like, no, dude. Like, I actually drove that vehicle. I drove down that road. I went down and had that experience,
Yes.
So that authenticity is, paramount, right?
Yeah.
And so we started doing more in automotive, and we had some ideas that we want to apply, and one of my friends had sold his company. He calls me up and he goes, I want to go rally racing. I'm like, cool, I'll introduce you to all the people. And so we started that process, and he went out and drove, and I'm like, man, he's terrible. Right. And so I'm like, great, we need to get you some training. And so we started that process, and that was Ken Block.
Yeah.
So we went to college together at Palomar, met in the screen printing class when he still had a company called 8 Ball. And that was the precursor to DC and Dub and some of the other things that he did. And it was this junior college that at the same time, Grant Britton was going there, Damon Way was going there, I was going there, Wade, who's now a teacher there, was going there, and then a few other people as well. So you had that in one area, and then you had Transworld Media not too far from there. So it was a real creative nucleus, right?
That's cool.
Yeah, it was a real bitch in time, right?
Yeah.
So this is all going on, and so we go out and we're filming rallies and trying to get people to care about how cool rally was.
Yep.
And it's not working. Spending $1 million a year racing rally cars and nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
So my brother and I really were theorizing, like, okay, if we could take all the little best parts of a rally, these little moments that we see,
Right.
and create a skateboard film with a car, that would be the way to do it, right?
Yeah.
And so, we were talking to Ken about our idea, and Ken had been doing this Gymkhana stuff, which frankly I thought was really dumb. Like, I didn't like the name. I looked at the performances and they were really boring. And, so again, we started theorizing about how we could take a Subaru and make it look, make it act and look like a muscle car. High horsepower, 4-wheel drive burnouts, like all this stuff. We didn't even know if it was possible. So, we find this engine builder who's still a good friend of mine to this day, Court Crawford, and he builds the first car. And, we come up with this concept of doing Gymkhana, and we pick a location and, build basically a stunt list. And the first stunt is, a high-speed drift. And all of this was theory, right?
Yeah.
And I'm telling
Yeah.
Ken, like, yeah, man, if you keep it pinned and keep the wheels spinning, you'll be fine. And I'm like, I don't know if that's true, right? And then we get to El Toro, and El Toro has, it's an old airfield, and it has these lips on it that are like 6 to 8 inches. I mean, they weren't like 2-inch lips. So then I'm like marking the lips with the flag. I'm like, don't hit that, don't hit that. And he's like, where am I going to go? And I'm like, just drive through that and then pitch it sideways, right? And I'm, again, it's theory.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think you should be like just at 100.
Yeah.
And he's like, why did you pick 100? And I'm like, it sounds cool, man. Like, like there was no science. I'm not going to lie. And,
Again, you don't like math,
yeah. And so
just kind of, go with
the other
it.
thing was like,
It's a gut thing.
I thought the car was going to be caged. And it wasn't. He just had a torsion bar in the middle of it. And so, like, I looked at that and was like, yeah, if we flip this car, he's dead. At 100 miles an hour. Yeah. Right? And,
You better not flip that car.
So Ken goes out and absolutely stomps it. Yeah. Right? And then, we spend, a couple days up there shooting. We had to go back for one session to finish up some stuff. And, we come to the now infamous, donuts around the Segway. Yeah. And, again, it's like, sounds like a cool idea. Who's going to get on the Segway? Oh, nobody will get on the Segway?
Yeah.
My brother goes, you guys are all pussies, and he gets on the Segway, right? And
I'll get you to do
he's
this.
supposed to be filming, right?
Yep.
And I'm like, no, bad idea, Josh. We're supposed to trick them into them doing it. One of the guys who worked for us, right? Because we had kind of, figured out that like he wasn't going to die, but like most of the momentum of the car was going out from, the interior. And so, yeah, Josh ended up on the hood a few times, but he had
Trying to get the shot.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he had the cojones to do it and like literally make history, right? And now everybody does it, and they're like, they know it can be done. It's a known thing. But then we didn't know. And that was one of the days that we couldn't afford to have an ambulance there. So I'm like, I remember telling him like, okay, we both have been in martial arts since we were kids. I'm like, just tuck your chin, judo roll it. You'll be fine.
There you go.
I'm like, he's just looking at me like, are you insane?
And he's your younger brother.
He's my younger brother. Yeah, needless to say, my mom was pissed when she saw that. So
I bet.
So, Gymkhana comes out and it just
breaks the internet.
Yeah, we knew it was rad, but YouTube was new, and we actually didn't put it on YouTube. Initially, we put it on our own server, and fortunately the guy who ran that service is a friend of mine, and so he called me and said, "Hey, I'm gonna do you a huge favor." He goes, "I'm gonna tell you to go put this on YouTube because if you guys keep at the rate that you're at, you're gonna owe me like $100,000 and just hosting fees to serve all the videos." So we eventually put it on YouTube, and it did what it did. And it's rad because, again, to me, it backs up what we believe in the idea of creating things that are authentic, right? And it's really funny because then we went on to produce the next two and get more sponsors and more people and more money involved, which was great because in the beginning it was just us and Ken. Sure, yeah. And, it became a thing where, I'd have to sit in these marketing meetings and people would tell me, oh no, it must be under 2 minutes or nobody's going to watch it. And all these rules they had come up with.
Right.
And I'd literally go, you know what, we're going to do it the way we do it.
Yeah.
And it was funny and it wasn't intentional, but the videos got longer. They went from, I think the first one was 7 and then it was 11 minutes and then it was like 22 minutes and they did more views.
Yeah.
Right. So it's
like you get addicted to watching it. Like, what are they? Wait, they keep topping it. Like,
yeah,
it keeps getting better.
It's this thing about being creative.
I know. I was always watching.
Well,
them,
from painting,
yeah,
it's like when you're in the zone, you got to go with it.
Yep.
You can't.
And it's a gut instinct too. If this needs to be what it is.
You can't listen to people going, well, Theresa, pinstripes don't sell anymore.
Nope. Yeah.
Scallop. You should never do any scallops.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm doing scallops, right?
Yeah.
It's this thing I always say, like with Metallica, with Ride the Lightning, you realize when they made that album, there was no audience for hard rock. There was no audience for metal. It was not a business. It was like, we'll make this and wonder. It was like, we're going to make a rad piece of art and we're going to feel good about it. And we think other people will dig it. Yeah. Right. And they were so right that they created a genre, right? Just like we did with these automotive films. Right. And I'm really proud of that. And, there's been some good films since then, that have been influenced by them, by the Gymkhanas that we've done, but nowhere near what I think can be done.
Totally. I agree.
So, it's funny because it's kind of like being in a band where you're like, the recipe is right there. It's visual. Like you just copy it. Right. But people always miss the details. Right. And they go, oh, well, this, and this. And it's like everything from how they shoot it to the vehicles they select to the driving to the funniest thing for me now is, seeing all the young filmmakers and they have all these tools and especially slow-mo and they don't know how to use them. They're like slow-moing in the part that they should be speeding up. Right. So they don't understand what the vehicle's doing and why it's remarkable. Right. So it's an interesting thing. And it's, I go back to the films that we were influenced by, Bullet, the Rendezvous movie, Climb Dance, those weren't things that were made to be commercially successful necessarily.
Yeah.
They were just badass.
Yeah. Yeah. And it comes from a place inside of you. Like, so even when I'm like painting or doing something like that, like to me, like I have to know the whole process. And it's like what you just explained. It's like, yes, you're behind the camera and shooting, but unless you understand what that vehicle is capable of doing, you can't really capture that moment. No. So you knew all that. You knew the vehicle can do this. Yeah. I know it can do it. Do you see my vision? Can you understand it? Because I'm going to get that moment right then. Yeah. And it's like, not everyone can see that, but you need to know the process the whole way through. I mean, like you with driving too. It's like, you need to understand the whole car, how it performs, what your input is to it. There's so many factors that all fall into that. And you mentioned it. It's like people forget one or two things or like, it's not important. It loses all its authenticity.
Well, in my experience, part of what wrecks it is Hollywood, right? It's like people are more worried about getting their smoothie than creating art. And that's what's cool about, digital camera systems and the democratization of, all these tools is that you don't need Hollywood anymore.
Yeah, the artist starts to emerge on an even playing field,
Yeah.
It's
even with cars,
cool.
like one of the things I'm most excited about is, seeing all these smaller car companies and motorcycle companies pop up and they're like, yeah, you know what? We're good. We don't need to make, a million units. We're going to make 100 or 10 or, 1,000 or whatever it is. And they're just going to make something badass, So the accessibility of the tools has, spawned a lot more opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really the direction we're kind of going in now. There's opportunity there. It just depends on if you want to dive in and try to grab it or not, so.
100%. So speaking of diving in,
Okay.
let's do another one.
The next one.
Okay, this one's probably my current favorite. Right?
Okay.
And
right.
Don't be scared.
How do you all feel though?
I think Marcel should have a little. Well, that's yours.
Does anyone want to join us?
After
Hey.
hours.
Are you?
Sorry.
Who's professional here? What?
We're all real professionals here. Okay, tell us about this. First off, how do you say the name?
I'm gonna go for Nahules, right?
Nahules.
I'm gonna go for. I like it.
And this is
Nahules.
an espadine, right? So similar to the one that we just had. Okay. But this is a reposado, so it's been rested for about a month in a oak barrel, right? So this is going to give you a completely different flavor profile.
Okay.
Is reposado, does that mean rest?
Yeah, it means rest.
Oh,
Okay.
I didn't realize
And
that
does
either.
that
And you don't
actually-
have to, are you doing any?
Oh,
I know.
what the hell?
Okay.
Oops. Is the resting period what brings the color?
Yeah. So
Ooh, smells spicy.
yeah.
That one's a little more, yeah. I always feel like the silver is smoother. And the gold is more
Sparkly.
like it has now with the resting period. Does it?
Smooths it out more.
Does it?
Yeah. So what?
There's a little front end bite though.
There is because the bottle's still hot, so let it breathe a little
Oh,
bit.
okay.
Right. But
Okay.
yeah. So this starts to take on more fruit properties. Like there's a little bit of pineapple, some guava in there, right? It's like smoked fruit over a fire a little bit.
I feel like I taste anise in it.
Yeah?
Or
Oh,
star
I
fruit.
could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Now try it again. Now let's open
You're
up.
going to turn me
Okay.
into a true official here.
It's smoothed out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It definitely.
Sorry. Like,
I love watching
it, like,
your eyebrow
climbed up back there. I mean, it tastes
me.
good.
There
It tastes
is.
good. It
There
tastes
it
good, but it's like,
Right.
yeah, there's like, it's that sparkliness kind of gets you right there.
Yeah.
And then it,
Yeah.
I don't even know how to explain it.
Well, and the more
you-
you drink it, the more you'll
I'll
taste more flavors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely do a little bit of orange.
I still have my I
Do
still
you?
have my orange and
Okay.
worm.
Okay.
Here, I'll take a piece of that.
My
There
wormy
you go.
orange.
Thank you.
Dip it.
Yep.
I'm not gonna lie, that's so good.
I agree. I'm surprised.
So good. You just have to come try this.
Yeah, it's funny because you see the.
I'm eating worm. Yeah. Oh, my mom would love that.
Yeah, totally.
I should give it to her and not tell her. She's gonna be so mad.
Yeah, it just looks like something you put on the rim of your glass.
Yeah, it
when you're,
looks like
when you're
tahini.
Gorgeous
at the,
looking.
at the
Tahini,
bar.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's just that mashed
Yeah.
up, basically.
Yeah.
Grass.
Well, yeah, let's have some grasshoppers, right?
Why did you
I
have
was
to
gonna
do
ask,
that?
when does a grasshopper come
So
into
these
play?
these are chapalinas, right? So these are
What is
eaten.
chapalina?
They're just a dry roasted.
I think ours were like honey roasted when I tasted them last
my
time.
goodness.
Yeah, these ones have a little bit of
In a
flavor.
Japanese restaurant, yeah.
So
Should
these
I have
are
some orange chaser?
Are you gonna have one?
yeah.
I
Oh,
mean, same.
Yeah, I'll have one.
I'm gonna have two here.
Okay.
Grasshopper.
Maybe I'll put some of the salt.
Some of the worm on it. Is it better with the worm?
Just
I mean, if
tastes like
anything, it tastes a little bit like a dried fruit,
yeah.
right? Like somewhere in
just
between.
Oh, there's like a really
Yeah.
smoky flavor to it.
It is, yeah.
There's somewhere between like a dried tomato and a dried fig,
There you go.
right?
Yeah, but it's
I'm
very dry,
surprised- I
not
was gonna
chewy
say,
at all.
I'm surprised I don't not like it.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty tasty.
So
It's
you go into bars all
And
over
this
Mexico.
is what Matt was talking about, right? He was in your spot, and now he's like,
Yeah.
look.
You go into
Like,
bars
wow.
all over mainland Mexico, and they
Right?
have these like peanuts, right? And they just
Not
they
like
eat 'em.
peanuts I've ever had, huh?
But the cool story about these is like these were, I guess, invented or they figured it out because, thousands of years ago
they
the
were
only-
hungry.
Well, no, the only way of communication was they had to send a runner into a city, so from village to village, right?
Yeah.
And they would be hundreds of miles away.
Sure.
So they had to carry a small bag of something that had high protein in it.
Oh.
This
Yeah.
is what they carried, so they keep it as a tradition, right?
If we ever need our protein, there you go. That's what we need to do.
I was worried that there was going to be something popping in my mouth, and it was just going to.
I've had the honey roasted
Yeah, it
ones,
was
and
really-
even those were like actually really good. My
Yeah.
son
Yeah,
like
these were
eats
good.
them like
Yeah.
like candy.
Which is
It's
shocking.
hilarious.
Right?
Yeah, I'm very shocked.
It's not though. Like again, as you travel, you try stuff that seems completely foreign to you, and then a lot of times you're like, "Wow, this is really good," right?
Yeah.
I also call that a little bit of peer pressure, though, too.
Well, right now it's peer pressure, right?
It's a little
Jane, do this.
No. I
No,
have
but
my,
it's actually
it actually,
really
I'm glad
good.
I did it.
I know.
The
No, I
worm,
totally agree.
the salty worm mash, whatever
It's
that is, it's really
amazing.
good. So it kind of opened up the idea.
And it doesn't look like that. So,
No.
it's
It's like he said, it looks like tahini. It's a nice tease.
it,
And those actually looked like some dried fruit, like you had said.
they did. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It totally messes with your mind. Totally.
I mean,
so
shoot.
then you're like, whatever, I'll just
Like,
try
yeah.
it.
Crushed worms.
Are we talking too long?
Pretty much, yes.
We can make like a series out of it. It's already a two-part.
Well,
So,
that's what I love
okay.
about podcasts is like there isn't.
It's like they want to go home
Right.
for Cinco de Mayo. Okay, guys, thanks so much. I'm Fastlane Jane.
And I'm Design Muse.
And this is,
Matt Martelli.
and that was High Octane Hustle.